I want to thank Gold for sponsoring this. I want to thank Lana Madola. Where's Lana? She's here somewhere. Well, this was Lana's idea, so if this doesn't go well, talk to Lana. But thank you for inviting me to do this. As Matt said, we're going to talk about appreciation today. I've got a little personal story I want to share with you, and then if you would like to do so, we're going to do an exercise at the end of this little talk. You've got thank you cards on your tables, you've got envelopes, we've got stamps up here. So you will be able to walk out of here with a thank you note that you can put in the mail to somebody today. So with that thought, let me start by sharing this. You all know Mother Teresa, are familiar with her. I love this quote. She once said, "There's more hunger for love and appreciation in this world than there is for bread." So think about that. You know, there are a lot of hungry people in this world, but in her view, love and appreciation are even more important than physical sustenance. So with that thought in mind, again, here's what we're going to cover today: appreciation, why it's important. Talk a little bit about why people don't do it, and then got 4 easy steps to help everybody write a note of appreciation today. I do want to mention one other thing. I've got a little bit of a cold, so can you hear me okay in the back?
Yeah, good.
Anybody else have a cold? Show your hands. You might want to sit up front. We can keep our germs to ourselves. There are a few more seats up front. So why did Lana and Gold ask me to talk today? I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm not an expert on appreciation. I'm not sure I'm an expert on anything. I'm a writer. I do corporate communications for Discover. It's my main job. In my free time, I do my own creative writing. A few years ago, I received a thank you note from my youngest sister that I'll tell you about in a minute. It had a strong impact on me. I actually count that as one of my most prized possessions now. So let me ask for another show of hands. How many of you have a personal note from somebody that you count among your prized possessions? I see maybe a third of you, but if you have a note like that, you know the importance of things like that. So it's the kind of thing you hang on to, look back at from time to time. And that's what I found myself doing. When I received this note from my sister, I appreciated it when I got it. I kind of put it away, but I found myself going back to it from time to time to look at it. It was a very personal note, so my first impulse was to keep it to myself. But as time went on, I thought I should share this. And so a couple of things happened. One is I wrote an essay about it, and it was published in several newspapers, and ended up being part of a collection of essays called Wise Men and Other Stories. A little bit later, I kind of took that even further. I took that note and that essay and expanded it into a book called The Note, which you can also see here. And as Matt said, I've got copies of both of these books. At the end of our session today, please come up and take a copy. They're free, so everybody grab a copy of each book. Take that with you. And I did another thing after that, the essay and then the book. Oh, I forgot, I have to tell you this. So the book Wise Men and Other Stories, originally you probably saw when you were invited to this that you were going to get a free copy of the note. As it turns out, Wise Men and Other Stories is coming out with a new cover this holiday season, which is shown on your right here. So that left me with a bunch of copies of the old cover, which I looked at as obsolete inventory. Lana told me, no, those are collector's items, so be sure to get your collector's item edition before the new one comes out. So did an essay, wrote a book about this. I also ended up doing something called the Note Project a couple of years ago. The Note Project was really a campaign to try to inspire other people to write notes of appreciation. My goal was to get 1 million notes and make the world 1 million times better. came in closer to 1,000. So the world's 1,000 times better, maybe not 1,000,000 times better. And this website's still out there if you want to take a look at it. I'm not currently promoting it, but it's still there as a resource for people. There are tips on there about how to share appreciation in your personal life or work. There's a lesson plan that a teacher can use at school, so check that out if you like. And then one more quick thing. All of these things kind of led me to realize that I like publishing. So I started a publishing company called Dream of Things. And I only mention that because as I was preparing to talk to you today, I realized that all the books I published by other authors, either memoirs or collections of essays, they're all by people who have typically gone through some hard times or had some significant experiences and came away with greater appreciation for what they have in their lives. So just thought I'd mention that. So I said this all started with a note from my youngest sister. I'm going to read the note to you in a few minutes, but first I have to tell you a little bit about my sister and our family. We had a large family. There were 7 of us. I'm the oldest. I'm the kid there on the right. And Sharon, my youngest sister, is sitting on my mother's lap there in the middle. When I was 10 and Sharon was 2, our parents got divorced. My father moved away, remarried, and eventually moved away to another city, so I only saw him about once a year after that. He, of course, paid child support. My mother worked several jobs to try to make ends meet, but it was tough to do. And after a few years, she ended up putting my brothers and sisters in an orphanage, which seemed to me an odd thing at the time, but I later learned that that's what happened to my mother. Her father died when she was young, and my mother and my Uncle Ray grew up in an orphanage. So that was what she knew. So when she came upon hard times, my brothers and sisters ended up going to live in an orphanage. I did not go to the orphanage because by that time I was 14 and I had a part-time job. I'd love to tell you I was a great kid and I was helping out at home, but that wasn't the case. I think my mother just wanted to keep me at home so she wouldn't be alone. I was actually a lot of trouble. When I was 14, 15, I skipped school, hit a high of 40 days of skipped school one year. I got through the 9th grade with 6 B's and 1 F. Also got arrested for shoplifting that year, had a probation officer, and while I was on probation, I stole my mother's car and wrecked it. So then there were a lot of talks about what to do with Mike. And in the end, the simplest thing was to have me go to live with my father. So I moved away, and the idea was that he would provide more discipline, which I needed at that point, and it worked. I got straightened out. But the downside of that was that I kind of further broke up our already broken home. And as years went by, I came to realize how important family is. And one of the regrets that I had was that I never really got to know my younger sister Sharon because we just never had that much time together. I did go home to visit once a year. I lived in Boston with my dad at the time, but I grew up in Louisville, so I go back typically at the holidays and always try to do something special when I was home. But never really knew what they thought of that. It kind of felt like, even though I was their older brother, I kind of felt like the divorced parent who went away and came back and tried to cram a lot of quality time into a short period of time. It often felt awkward. So a lot of years have gone by, right? My sister Sharon, all my other siblings are grown now. Sharon is married, has her own career. She's got a son and a daughter, so she's doing great. I'm going to see her at Thanksgiving. But after a lot of those years went by, I received this note from Sharon, so let me read this to you. It said, "Dear Mike, I have a very special memory of one of the times you came home to visit. It was Christmas. It was Christmas Eve. We didn't have a tree yet, so you took me out to get one. It was the first time I ever got to pick out a tree. Now, every year when we're going to get a Christmas tree, I think of you and that visit, and I smile. Thanks, love, Sharon. So that's the note, right? Pretty short, pretty simple. But again, it had a big impact on me because I didn't know, like I say, all those years, I did not know what she or my other siblings thought about coming back to visit. So I'm sharing that because, if there's someone special out there in your life and you have any reason to believe that they may not know how you feel, for God's sake, tell them. I guarantee you they'll appreciate it. So that's my story, pretty simple thing, right? But that's kind of the point. More than 20 years had passed since I took Sharon to get a Christmas tree and the time she sent me that note. But that note healed years of doubt for me. The visits have made a difference. So, I think sharing appreciation is important for some pretty obvious reasons. A simple note can change a person's life. But I've talked to Sharon, and I know that also sending a note can make a difference in the sender's life. So showing appreciation can change both people. And actually, I'll share another quote with you. This one's from Wayne Dyer, who had this to say. Research has shown that a simple act of kindness directed toward another human being, and I consider a note of appreciation an act of kindness. So a simple act of kindness directed toward another human being improves the functioning of the immune system. It stimulates the production of serotonin in both the recipient of the kindness and the person extending the kindness. Even more amazing is that persons observing the act of kindness have similar beneficial results. So kindness extended, received, or observed beneficially impacts the physical health and feelings of everyone involved. So you can see how, just again, a simple note can really have a ripple effect and affect multiple people. So why don't people write thank you notes? Anybody want to venture a guess at the reason number one? Time? Exactly right. Don't have time. I understand that. We all have work, we have family, we have bills to pay, we have home improvement projects, we have a ton of things going on. But my argument would be that it really doesn't take much time. We're going to see that today for those of you who choose to do this exercise. And the return on the investment of your time is great. What else? Anybody have another guess as to why people don't write notes? What's that? Laziness? That's actually one of the reasons I have. The next most, I actually did a little survey on this, the next most popular, common reason I have for people is that they don't know what to say. Which I understand that too. I made my living doing writing, typically for executives. And I can tell you that when it comes to putting words on paper, a lot of people are intimidated, even people who have a lot of education. So it's a little bit intimidating, the idea of putting words on paper, especially if you're expressing your feelings and you're not used to doing that every day. But again, it only takes a few words, as you saw from the note from my sister. Another reason I've heard is that people think they already know how you feel. Maybe, but probably not. And really the only way to make sure they know how you feel is for you to tell them. I've heard people say that, nobody ever thanks me, so why should I thank other people? And my response to that is that thank yous are sort of like parties. If you aren't getting invited to many parties, maybe you should try throwing a few, and you'll be invited to some. It's kind of the same with thank yous. And then another reason I've heard is that thank you notes are old-fashioned. Maybe, especially handwritten thank you notes, that's kind of old-fashioned. I still think that's the best way to do it, but hey, it's a thought that counts, so email, text, whatever you want to do, go ahead and do it. The important thing is to let them know how you feel. So we're going to do a simple exercise. I'm going to walk through 4 steps, and like I say, if you want to participate, you'll go away with a note that you can send to somebody today. There are pens and scratch pads on your table, so use that if you want to do this exercise. And then at the end, grab one of those thank you cards and you can write your note right on the thank you card and send it out today. So I'm going to ask you to do several things. The first thing is just to write down 2 or 3 names. Right? Think about people in your life that you might want to thank. So it could be friends, family, neighbors, co-workers. You might have somebody sitting at your table that you want to send a note to today. I also think back to places in my past, like elementary school, high school, college, people you encountered along the way, past employers, old neighborhoods, organizations you belong to. You might also think of teachers or mentors, an old friend, your first boss. Of course, think of people that you like or admire. When I did this exercise for myself, I thought of a couple of people. One was my friend Gurdon from college, who is, I described him as an adult with ADD, very hyperactive guy. I'm kind of low-key, so sometimes we conflict. But the thing I know about Gurdon is that when we get together, we always have a good time. So he always comes to mind. I also thought of my great Aunt Nina. When I was a kid, we didn't have much money, so when we did go on vacations, we would go to Tampa and visit Aunt Nina, and she had an orange grove just outside of Tampa, and we would all, 7 kids and my mother, would all stay there for a week, and she was great. She used to threaten to take us fishing for alligators in the swamp next to her house. We never actually did that, but that kept us away from the swamp. But she would help catch chameleons, and just a great person. Second step, so pick one of those people and you just jot down a few notes that describe them. And I'm not talking necessarily about physical description, although you can do that, but think about their personality, their key traits, their strengths. With my friend Gurdon, he's an intelligent guy, he's energetic, he makes me laugh. Those are the kinds of things that I was trying to think of that I might want to say to him in a note. And then the last step is to just maybe recall some of your favorite memories with that person. Could be just good times that you had together, or a nice thing that they did for you, a shared experience. Maybe that person just happened to be there at a difficult time, but they probably didn't just happen to be there. They probably sensed that you needed some support at that time, and so they made sure they were there. Could have been something big, something little. And then think about how it made you feel. Did they cheer you up when you were down? Did they make you feel special when you were doubting your worth? Maybe they made you feel capable when you were doubting your ability. Or even loved or appreciated when you were feeling taken for granted. So if you do those 3 things, right, if you just take a few moments as we've done to think of a couple or 3 people in your life, think of some of the key traits you like about them, and then some of your favorite memories of those people. You have everything you need to write a note of appreciation. Right, so it's just a matter now of putting it all together. And I'll share this. I kind of hate to do this because it looks so formulaic, but that's not the point. The point is, it's so simple, right? It's just a matter of filling in the blanks. And of course, you can expand on this, but it is just such a simple thing to do. So with that, feel free to take one of those thank you cards and take the notes that you just used and write a thank you card to somebody. While you're doing that, I'll share a few notes kind of as examples of what I did what I came up with when I did this exercise. So I mentioned my friend Gurdon. Here's the note that I ended up writing to Gurdon. Dear Gurdon, you're one of the most energetic and fun people I know. I have lots of great memories from our long friendship, including our most recent get-together for dinner when you were in town last week. The main thing I think of when I think of you is that I always laugh and have a good time when you're around. Thanks for your friendship. So I sent that to Gurdon. This was actually a couple of years ago. Gurdon called me right away to say that meant so much to him. And you just kind of take it for granted. I took for granted that he knew that, but again, it meant a lot to him to get that note. I'll share another note that I wrote to a next door neighbor. This neighbor, I kind of viewed her as nosy, and when I was a kid, 10 or 12, I wanted to go out and play after dinner. Miss Latoni was always sitting out in the front yard saying the rosary, and she always wanted me to stop and say the rosary with her. And I'm like, yeah, that's right at the top of my list right now. But I usually did stop and sit with her for a while, partly because I knew that she kept a closet full of candy in her coat closet. But years later, I realized that she wasn't interfering. She was trying to look out for us. So I wrote her this note. Dear Miss Latoni, I often think of the times you asked me to stop and say a prayer with you before I went out to play after dinner. I probably seemed anxious to go play with my friends, and I was. But looking back, I'm glad we spent the time together. You were one of the most thoughtful and caring people I know. And I'll share two more notes. I didn't talk about this, but I've been thinking mostly in terms of personal appreciation for friends and family. But obviously there's a place for appreciation in the workplace. So another note that I wrote was to one of my first clients. Before I came to Discover, I was a freelance consultant doing annual report writing, speech writing, that kind of thing. So I wrote this to a person. Dear June, thank you for your business. You were one of my first clients, and for that reason alone, you hold a special place with me. But you are also one of the most enjoyable people I work with. I had a great time working with you on your company's annual report, and I admire the way you keep everybody involved and on track. It's a pleasure to work with you. So that's a great segue into this thing. Some of you may have heard about Thank Our Card Members, the campaign that's going on here at Discover. If you haven't heard about it, check it out on Discover Today. Basically, I think I have the facts right. You can pick up some free thank you cards to send to our card members. There's some suggested messages. But the end result will be a handwritten note from a Discover employee to one of our card members. So think about that. That's going to be, I think it'll be meaningful to a lot of card members. Probably not many companies are doing that. I mentioned my Aunt Nina, so I'll share one more note with you. My Aunt Nina has passed away years ago, so I couldn't send her a note. But her son, my second cousin, is still alive, so I ended up sending a note to him about Aunt Nina. So it's, Dear Bob, it's been many years since Aunt Nina died, but I want to let you know that I think of your mother often. My family didn't have much money when I was a kid, and Aunt Nina used to let us stay on your orange grove in Florida for our vacation. My cousin Bob, by the way, somehow managed to always be gone when my whole family of 7 kids was there. One time Aunt Nina helped me catch a chameleon, and I used to laugh when she talked about her plans to catch an alligator from the pond by her house. She was a special person, and I will always remember her. And I heard from my cousin Bob after that. We hadn't been in touch for probably more than 20 years, and now we at least keep in touch in the holidays. So a couple of final thoughts, and then I'm going to stick around if you want to talk more, and definitely come up and get copies of each of these books and get a stamp if you want to send your note. But recently, I was driving out to a friend's place in Iowa, and I was by myself. And I don't know why I had these kinds of morbid thoughts, but I'm thinking, I know why I had this thought. It was deer season, and I'm thinking, what if I hit a deer and die unexpectedly, right? I'm going to have a lot of unfinished business. So I thought I should write notes, to all the people in my family, my wife, my mother, my daughter, and put those in a safe place so if I do die unexpectedly, they'll know how I feel. And couldn't do that while I was driving, but I had my iPhone with me, so I thought I'm going to record a message right now, so if something happens, I hit a deer or something. They'll have this parting message from me. So I recorded a message, and it sounded kind of stupid as I got into it, so I need to rethink that. But after I recorded that, I had a very obvious thought, right? I should tell them now. Why am I thinking about writing this down for them to find later, or recording this for them to play after I'm gone? I should tell them now. And so I'm working on that. I told my wife what I wanted to say to her that night, told my daughter, and I have other people to tell. So think about that. I still think not a bad idea to leave a message behind. You always see those scenes in movies where they're reading the will, and the person who died addresses everybody in the room. Well, I'm not that organized, so it's probably more efficient just to tell them now. So I'll leave you with this. This is a quote from John Milton that I love. So he says, "Gratitude bestows reverence, allowing us to encounter everyday epiphanies, those transcendent moments of awe that change forever how we experience life in the world." So thanks again for coming today. Definitely come get a couple of copies of these books. Send your notes off to the folks, and thanks.